What's going on? Explore the adventure. This is Kyle. I'm here in beautiful Sedona, Arizona today. I thought I would come up here to Cathedral Rock and I thought I would sit here and tell you a little story about how exactly I got into astral projection. Now this is actually it's a very long story. I'll try and shorten it a little bit, and I'll try and include really important details, but it's been a long journey. It's been a long journey leading up to this moment, and the journey hasn't even started. It's just beginning. So I'll try and I'll hit on some key points of what happened in my life, and I'll take you along on this journey. So let's try it out. So I don't know if you're just starting to get into spirituality. I don't know if you're just starting to get into psychic abilities or clairvoyance or whatever. I don't know why you're into this stuff. It's not really something that people usually gravitate to unless they've had some powerful experiences. I happen to have some, recurring experiences that have led me up to this moment. And these experiences were incremental. It didn't all hit me at once. It was more of this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and then bam, a big event happened. And then all of these different big events and all of these small events and all of these events just came together. And then I realized, basically, there's a bigger picture to whatever this is, whatever this earth is, whatever this world is, whatever life is, whatever all of this is about. There's a bigger picture going on here. So my journey starts in California, Southern California. I actually went to UC Riverside. And when I first started attending there, I actually wasn't too spiritual. I was very curious. I was very curious about the possibilities of ghosts and paranormal activity. One of the reasons why I was so curious about it was because I was actually very afraid of death, and I was actually very afraid of dying. It was actually a recurring thought, a recurring thing in my mind that would play over and over again. This is actually something that would keep me up at night, and this is actually something that would really freak me out. Just not knowing what was on the other side, not knowing why I was here or if there was even a purpose to this. So this led me to becoming very fascinated with the paranormal, with ghosts, so to say. So when I first went to UC Riverside, what's interesting enough is that I would keep on hearing stories about weird activities that people would see on campus or just around campus. I remember going to the lunchroom and hearing these girls talking about this weird thing that they saw in their home. Apparently, everyone who lived in that home happened to be in a certain section of that home. They happened to be having some sort of like get-together, sleepover, or whatever girls do on late, dark, creepy nights where ghosts show up. But they were just chilling. All of them, everyone who happened to live there, was accounted for in that one area. And they said that there was something weird going on the other side of the hallway, on the other side of the house. And they could see it. They could see this thing, this creature, this entity, whatever it was, just down the hallway or on the other side of the house. And the thing was, who could that person be if all of the girls were on that side of the house? I would see on random forums for the school people talking about seeing weird shadows moving across like the dorms, moving across the campus. People would talk about hearing weird noises in the library. People would talk about hearing things in their houses when no one else was home. People talk about like little kids walking around their houses. People talk about ghosts wandering the streets at night. It was just interesting. It was fascinating hearing all of this. I was very curious about this, and it made me think, like, is all of this real? Is this a part of everyone's imagination? Is there some sort of phenomenon going on that's making people think that they're seeing something that isn't actually there? I had to dive into this. I had to look into this. So I told myself that I would get involved with just searching for weird and random things, and I would just put myself in creepy situations. You know, I didn't really have to do that, though. It's sort of, all of the weird stuff just came to me. I didn't have to put myself out there. It just found me. So after a year of living in Riverside and going to school to Riverside, I ended up moving into a house for my club, for one of the organizations that I was in. And one of my roommates claimed that he could see ghosts. He didn't immediately tell this to me, though. It was more of that, when I first met him, we would talk a lot about ghosts. It was funny, because he would talk to me about all of, I guess, the lore, all of the mysticism, all of just general theory about spirits and ghosts. And when I talked to him about this, he said, wow, I've never really been able to talk to anyone about this so in depth. And, you know, it's something that we connected on. So eventually when he did tell me that he could see ghosts, at first he didn't go super in depth about it. And to be honest, I didn't fully believe him. I just went along with it. At first he would tell me about seeing things here and there. And then he would tell me about seeing things more frequently. And then he would tell me about seeing things all the time. So I half believed this guy, and I half didn't. I was very skeptical, but at the same time I was curious. Like, what if he could actually see these things? What if he could actually perceive these things? Like, what if there's actually something beyond this life? What if people do go someplace? What if people do go somewhere? If they do, then this guy is a key to me understanding what all of this is about. So this guy was fascinating. I asked him so many different questions about what ghosts are, where they come from, why they're there, what they do. And he gave me a lot of very interesting answers. So this guy being my roommate and me living with him, I was able to ask him a lot of questions. And he would always tell me about whatever he saw. Now, things get weirder than this. Things go even deeper. There was a point where he told me that he could not only see ghosts, but he could see demons and he could see angels. And he would tell me about how angels aren't exactly what we perceive them to be, what we think that they are based off of the Bible. They're not exactly, well, some of them can be human, well, look human. He said that angels take many different shapes and forms, actually. He would talk about how some of them have multiple different heads. Some of them have multiple different wings. He would talk about how some of them are like different shapes and sizes. Some of them are like giant, like giant buildings. Some of them are like very small. He would talk about demons. How some are just made of pure fear. He would talk about the different shapes, sizes. You know, it's interesting. I asked him about when he told me about how there are angels out there that are like multiple stories high, like giant buildings, I asked him if there were any demons like that. And he said, yeah, sometimes there are. Sometimes there's big giant ones, but they're never around for long. He said that it's too noticeable. I don't know. To be honest, I'm going to get into it about what my beliefs are about him later in this video, but I'll keep talking. So he told me a lot about ghosts, angels, demons. And then one night, he just took things a whole new level when he decided to tell me and one of his close friends, who also lived with us, that he couldn't just see ghosts. He couldn't just see demons. He couldn't just see angels. He claimed to be a necromancer. I didn't really know what he meant. I guessed. I was like, oh, like, do you just, like, I don't know, like, talk with the dead and raise the dead or whatever. Basically, from my understanding, what necromancy is it involves communicating with deceased spirits in order to retrieve information or to understand truths about the universe or to find information. He would talk about how he could make contracts with demons. He would talk about consequences of certain contracts, things that he could do. I asked him if he's ever seen a sort of resuscitation before. He said that he has. He said that in his family, a lot of his family, they practiced magic. They practiced magic, and each family member had a different ability. And each family member, when they would pass on those abilities to new family members, it was sort of like a ritual where they would pass on their previous knowledge to the next generation. So him being a necromancer, this was information passed on to him from someone very close to him. And that information was passed to the generation before him and the generation before that. Different abilities that he spoke about within his family were, I mean, of course, you know, there's the empaths, there's, you know, his gift of, I guess, necromancy, seeing ghosts, demons, angels, whatever. He would talk about a cousin who could, you know, like, reconfigure the shapes of things. I guess transmutation, alchemy, I don't know, like if like I were to get this rock and like transform it into an apple or something like that. I'm not entirely sure like what it entailed. Astral projection, influencing people's luck, or he said luck in quotes. I'm still not sure what that means. Being able to see into the future, being able to predict certain outcomes based off of certain actions. Now this was all extremely new to me, and this was all incredibly fascinating to me, because this was something I've never come across before. When I started hearing about this stuff, I started to become more involved with my faith. I started to think about how I grew up as a Catholic. I started to think about how I drifted apart from that religion because so many things seemed wrong with it. So many things seemed incongruent. So many things seemed things just didn't connect. The dots just didn't connect in the right way, and I was asking way too many questions when it came to that. But I started to get involved again. I started to pray again. I started to, you know, think about the world in a completely different way. I started to think about how, wow, like, what if Jesus actually did exist? What if all the things about what they said he did And what if there is a God, and what if there's a whole bigger picture to all of this? And I just got so involved emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. My roommate had me hooked. Like, this is just something that was so fascinating to me. Now, I want to say that, like, a normal person, the moment that a normal person meets someone who says that they can see ghosts, they're basically like, yeah, sure, yeah, right. Or they're just like, they just leave. They just don't entertain the thought. They don't entertain the idea. The thing is about me, though, is that I'm so curious about learning new things and exploring new things and going on just new adventures, just in my mind and in my body and out in the world. I had to explore this. I had to see whether what he was talking about was true or not. So I guess the climax of all of this, all of these experiences, was just a moment where he said he was going to perform a ritual. Well, actually, no, he didn't even tell me that he was going to do this. This was after he claimed that he was a necromancer, but soon after he revealed to me what he was. I remember a day where I came back home, and I remember seeing him, and he was acting weird. He wasn't acting like himself. He was acting different. And I remember just sitting with him one day. I'm laying on the couch. It's nighttime. There's randomly some candles on the floor, and he's playing guitar. I've never seen him play guitar before, so I'm just like, what? When did you start playing guitar? And he said, do you notice anything different about me? He's even speaking differently, slightly differently. And I said, yeah, I guess I've never seen you play guitar before. And what I also noticed earlier in that day was that he was referring to himself in the third person, or he was just speaking weird. So then what he claimed was, well, the thing was, it wasn't actually him. It was, what he did was some sort of like replacement, or that's what he claimed. He claimed that he did a little switch. My roommate would tell me about one of his best friends that he grew up with. He would continually talk about him, and he would continually talk about how much he missed him because he died. In fact, he claimed that he was actually murdered. He claimed that he was murdered for being a homosexual when they were both 15 years old. He claimed that he would continually see his friend and talk to his friend on the other side, and he would be so sad because he was so close to his friend yet so far away because his friend no longer inhabited his spiritual body. So what he claimed that night was that he wasn't my roommate, but he was that friend who had died a long time ago. There was a switch. You know, I need to, just to make this less confusing, I'll call my roommate the Necromancer, and I'll call his friend, I'll just call him Ghost. I know, a very unique name. So Ghost was operating this body now, and the Necromancer was floating off in the spiritual realm, doing whatever there is to do in the spiritual realm. So I got to spend a week with Ghost, with the deceased roommate, and he would always tell me about what it was like, you know, growing up with my roommate, growing up with the Necromancer, what it was like being his friend, the things they would always do. I actually became very emotionally invested during this time. I was really listening. I took it seriously. I was still halfway not believing this, and I was still taking it with a grain of salt, but I was still interested. I was still fascinated. So I kept on listening. I kept on experiencing. There was a night where he finally told me how he died. He told me about how he left this party early because I guess he was being picked on. And on his way out of the party and on his way home, just walking home, these guys drove by him, and they were just yelling at him, making homophobic remarks. Apparently one of them threw a beer bottle or some sort of bottle at his head. He ended up falling down, hitting his head on the wrong spot of the concrete, of the curb. Ghost told me about how he saw these ambulances come to pick up his body and how he couldn't do anything about it. And all he had to do was think about my roommate. All he had to do was think about the Necromancer. And then he was there, right next to him. So the Necromancer heard about what happened, and he was actually driving on his way to the hospital to check on his friend. So when Ghost said that he showed up in the car right next to the Necromancer, he started crying. He started saying, "No, you're not supposed to be here. You're not supposed to be here," because what that meant was, he was a ghost. Ghost was a ghost. He was dead. When he was telling me this story, I actually broke down crying. I actually started sobbing really hard. I looked at my roommate. I looked at Ghost, or whoever was in that body at the moment, or whatever was going on, and I told him, "This better not be a fucking joke. You better not be joking." And I'm just crying. He's showing no emotional reaction to this. He slowly turns towards me and he says, "Why would I joke about this? Why would the Necromancer joke about doing all of this? The reason why he chose me to operate inside of his body right now was because he really values you as a friend, and he wanted to show you, he wanted to prove to you that what he was talking about was real. He wanted to show you that everything that he's experienced is real." It was a very emotional night for me. I remember we were going to go to the gym that night, but instead we went on a hike. I remember as I was changing to getting ready just to go on this hike, I remember Ghost inside of my roommate or whatever coming up to my room. I remember him just solemnly looking down at the ground, just, in contemplation, and he just said, "Thank you, Kyle." When he said that, though, it didn't feel like Ghost was saying it. It just felt like the Necromancer was saying it. But I don't know. I don't know who was saying it. Could have been Ghost, could have been him. So, later that night we went on a hike. We went on top of this beautiful mountain. We were looking over the city, looking over the lights that just encompass everything. And I asked him, "So, what's the spirit world like?" And he said, "Well, it's beautiful, but it's like comparing apples to oranges. It's beautiful in its own way, in the same way that Earth is beautiful." Bit of a vague answer, but I just took it at the time. He said a quote to me that stuck with me to this day. He said something along the lines of, "Dream as if you'll live forever. Live as if you die today." Now, this was an emotional night for me as well because, Ghost was telling me that he was leaving that night. He said that at, 3:33 in the morning or whatever time, he said that he was going to be leaving the Necromancer's body, and the Necromancer would be coming back into the body, and, we just spent time together. I gave him a hug, I went to sleep that night, and then in the morning, I saw my roommate again, back in his own body. I don't know. At the time, I believed it more than I do now, but I was a lot more gullible back then. I was more prone to believing things without actually questioning them as much, even though I was still skeptical. When I saw him, he just seemed very solemn, and he said, "There's a lot that I have to tell you about what I experienced." To be honest, I didn't go too in-depth into asking him questions about, what happened on the other side. I actually was losing curiosity. This is where I wrap up my first chapter of this story with he was my roommate, and I was very emotionally attached to him. and I grew very close with him, but at the same time, when I would be talking to his close friends, he would be caught in a lot of lies. He would be talking about, like, he would be making promises or telling his friends certain things, and then they would try and verify these things, and turns out it would be a lie. I remember there was this one big moment where he claimed that he was about to have, this is messed up. This is one of the reasons why I got so emotionally invested with him, was because he would continually tell me that he had cancer. Like he had cancer in his back or something like that. There was something wrong with his back. And there was one time where he would continually do this where he would say, oh, I'm going to have surgery. And then I would get emotionally hyped up, emotionally invested. He would leave. I'd be concerned for his safety. He'd come back. I would feel relief. This time he said he was going on a week-long like trip. Like he was going off like to like a special hospital or something. And he was going to be getting special treatment there. And this was a big operation. And that there was like a 30% chance that things wouldn't work out for him. So while he was on this trip, me and his other close friends find out that he was actually like on a cruise with his family. Like his sister had posted a picture of herself and him, and they're all out there just relaxing. And you know, people were pissed off. People were angry. Like, why would you lie about this? All just to get attention? All because you feel sorry for yourself? His close friends would continually tell me about the lies that he would tell. You know, when I tried reaching out to one of them, when a ghost was possessing the Necromancer's body, and I tried calling one of his friends and reaching out to him, I really wanted that friend to meet ghosts so he could talk to him. I thought it was important. But later, when that friend told me about why he didn't want to meet up, was because he said that this always happens. He always makes things up. And he always gets caught in these lies. So there was a lot of emotional back and forths here. And because he was caught in so many lies, I just decided to not really entertain like everything that he would talk about anymore. You know, when Ghost left the Necromancer's body and said that he could never come back, about like a month or so later, I remember my roommate coming up to my door, and then him just saying, oh, hey, it's me, it's Ghost, I'm back. I don't know. It was just one of the reasons why I felt so sad, one of the reasons why I felt so emotionally invested. Well, the thing was, if this was all real, then it's a really sad story. It was a really sad story for me. I felt sorry for him. But if none of this was real, then I still feel really sad, because it's just like, what sort of emotional, psychological state do you have to be in to have to lie to people about these things in order to get them attached to you, in order to get them to invest in you emotionally? I don't know why this quote is coming to me right now. It's something that he would say often, but he said, apathy is the best punishment. Whenever, I guess, he wouldn't get what he wanted, or he wasn't emotionally satisfied, or he felt like he was being neglected, he would show apathy towards his roommates. He would show apathy towards me. He'd be very avoidant. It was such a huge emotional roller coaster. And to be honest, I felt like I was used. I felt like I was played with. I felt like I was emotionally led on. I was lied to. I felt like I was betrayed. And I just couldn't help but feel disgust and just resentment. And I ended up just slowly distancing from him and slowly severing ties with him, to the point where to this day I don't talk to him. He kept on trying to reach out to me. In fact, he would make vague threats about how he would have dreams about me falling, or you know, he spoke about how he has a family demon, and he would try and reach out to me and say that demon was watching me or saying hi to me. It's all crazy just thinking about it now, because the story doesn't end there. In fact, it gets even more complicated, and it gets even crazier. Because if it weren't for him, I wouldn't have met this one person that completely changed my perspective. on psychic abilities and ability to perceive things outside of the original five senses. So this is wrapping up chapter 1 of my story of just, how I got involved with spirituality and how I started with astral projection. I'll keep on going with this. I'm actually at Cathedral Rock in Sedona right now. I probably said that at the beginning of this video. I'm gonna go to Bell Rock now. I'm gonna go to Bell Rock. I'm gonna find a quiet place and I'm gonna continue recording and I'm gonna continue talking. So stay tuned. Things are gonna get crazier. I'm gonna talk about the next person that I ended up getting involved with, who ended up actually being the real deal, or at least more of the real deal. So I'm excited to share that with you.